Hey, thanks for coming by the channel. Today, I've got one of the most preeminent acting coaches in all of Hollywood. Her clients include Ryan Reynolds, Amy Adams, the list goes on. Warner LOUGHLIN is here today. I can't wait to get this going. Let's start now. So when I met you, we were at the film festival and you were a presenter and I had no idea you were there. And they said your name is the presenter and it was like a dog whistle. I was like, what? I totally fangirled on you, like rushed you as soon as you walked off the stage. I completely embarrassed myself. And you've been nothing but so kind and gracious, and I'm surprised you didn't call security.
It is my complete pleasure. And I got to tell you, that was the sweetest thing when I walked off the stage and you said that. I went, oh, I love this guy. He's such a sweetheart. I did. And I'm glad that we've remained in touch and that we're friends now. Yeah.
Yes, it was wonderful. Because so kind of the background on this channel, we've kind of talked about this, batted it around a little bit, but the idea that it's called show business and business is the bigger word. And the first step in this business is learn the craft. If you don't know the craft, you're not going to work.
It's very true.
So if you are watching this and you are just starting out in this business, go to her website, get her book, take her classes, and if not her, somewhere, get started, just go. So that out of the way, what was your aha moment? Like, when were you like, I want to do this for a living?
I think I was probably 3. I know that sounds insane.
I was 6.
But we were living in a different country when I was tiny. And they used to take this big screen. You remember those big screens that you could set up, and they would put folding chairs outside and they would project movies. And I remember thinking, wow, I want to live in that world. I had no idea what acting was at that point, but I think that's probably it. And in high school, we didn't have drama in my high school because it's such a tiny town. Great place to grow up. Pardon?
This was overseas?
Well, no, we came back to the States. So I grew up in Murphy, North Carolina, and it was such a tiny town that we didn't have drama in high school. And I went to my English teacher and I said, can we have drama? She goes, well, no, but if you would like to kind of present to me this paper for extra credit where you block out all the scenes and you do everything that a director would do, go ahead and do that for extra credit. I went, yeah. And then in college, of course, acted. So
where did you go to college?
University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill.
Okay, you went to nice. Okay,
Garfield.
You know, in our communications, you said you had family in Murphy, but I didn't realize you actually grew up there.
Grew up there, yeah, born and raised.
I got my undergrad at Western.
Oh, did you? I had no idea. You were so close to me. Yeah.
So from a business standpoint, you went to school, you started acting, and then you decided to start your studio.
Well, I moved to New York first. I spent 9 years in New York.
Okay.
And I was doing a play that no one understood, including the cast director. And I remember in that play looking out in the audience, and people were like this. They were like, what? And I was making, I don't know, $50 a week, maybe, doing that play. And I thought, I'm going to move to LA. So I told my agent.
Was that in the middle of a performance?
Yes, yes. I really thought I'm moving to LA right in the middle of the performance. I'm like, no, this is not going to work, right? So I told my agent that I was moving to LA. She called me a sellout, and I went, meh, you know. So I drove cross country with 2 cats and a case of Campbell's soup and a thermos and a hot plate, and arrived in LA with $400. I went, yes, I made it. Yes, this is awesome. And I've been in LA for 36 years.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I always say I went out to LA. I went for broke and pretty much achieved it.
You know, it's okay though. You're doing so well. I'm so proud of you, honey. And these days, you know, it's changed so much. The business has changed. And back in the day, if you weren't in LA or you weren't in New York, you were going to have a hard time. These days, so many more markets are open, and of course, the world has changed. So you don't really have to be in these 2 major places to work, which is fabulous.
Yeah. So as you started your studio, how did that, tell me about one of the biggest obstacles you faced from a business standpoint?
Starting the studio?
Starting the studio. You
don't want your overhead to get too high. Like you don't want, starting a studio, it's got to be for the love of it, because you're not gonna get rich quick on, you know, acting classes and whatnot. It's got to be your passion, really does. It was all word of mouth, and it was so by accident. It was just such an accident that, I mean, I never intended to start a studio at that point. I had coached people for free for like a long time, and people just kept coming. Casting directors would send me people. I'm like, sure, I'll help you. I'm an actor. I'm not a coach, and I do something a little different, but sure, come on over. I'll help you. So I was helping people, you know, just coaching people. And then a friend of mine calls me up. He was an agent, and he says, so I know that you're coaching people, but can you recommend any acting classes? And I'm like, in LA, that's hard because they're kind of theater based. And that's one thing as an actor, you want to find a class that is geared towards television and film, but also applicable to theater, right? And I had been in theater for years, and then at that point had been in TV and film for years. So yes, it's acting, but it's slightly different, right? And I said, you know, that's hard in LA because a lot of places in LA still teach old school theater methods. And he goes, well, if you think of one, give me a call. I said, I will. Keith, I promise you, within that hour, another phone call came in, and this time from a manager. And manager said, I've got 2 newbies straight from New York, and I need to get them in class. Where would you suggest? And I said, ooh, that's hard. So funny, because I just got a call. I am not kidding you. Within 30 more minutes, the phone rang again. What? And it was another agent friend of mine who said, where do I send people for classes? And I went, oh, okay. I got a calendar, and I put my finger on a date, and I said, September 10th, my classes. And he goes, I didn't know you had classes. I went, because I didn't want to lie. He goes, how much are they? I'm like, I'll get all that info to you. He goes, where are they? I'm like, getting it all together now, but I'll let you know. I'll let you know when I get it all together. And he said, okay, great. And that's how the studio started. Where did your heart for script analysis and that kind of digging come from? Came from, I think, when I was at Carolina. I also was a double major there, but because they wouldn't let me triple major, because psychology was so interesting to me, and I almost had enough hours to have a psychology degree, but it was always fascinating to me. I used to be I was a very heavily method trained actor until I realized, I cannot sustain this, because when we use our own tragedies, what happens is that when we need to draw those tragedies back up to use in our work, they stay with us. We own it, right? And you'll also find that you'll look around looking for tragedies and go, oh, I can use that. Oh, that was horrible. I can use that. It's just psychologically a very unhealthy way to act. And secondly, it doesn't work in TV and film, because
you got to do 15 takes.
Right.
You got to do 15 takes.
You got to do 15 takes. Try bringing that tragedy up 15 times. No, you're going to dry up, dry out. And then you've got this little devil on your shoulder going, do it, go there. And you've got this other devil going, no, don't go there. No, don't do it. You don't want to relive that again. So then you're just frustrated beyond belief. And tears of frustration, I always like to say, are not the same as tears that your character is crying. So yeah. So I thought there has to be a better way to do this. And I started thinking about all of the psychology training I'd had, and that's how it happened. And I went, you know, character is just a human being. So what makes a human being tick? And that's how it began. It's
so true. Cause you know, cause I would always kind of go through and as I look at the script, I go, and I guess this is as close as I want to get to, you know, talking about acting strategy and class, right? But you take a look at the script, and I was going, okay, if I'm here on page 10 and I'm back on page 15, I've been somewhere. Where is that? Like, does it? And regardless of whether or not there's clues on the page to it, what do I make of that? And how does it, you know, what happened while I was gone, you know, and how does it feed coming back into this next moment? Kind of like you call it, finding the facts, right? You're just kind of like a detective, just go in, you know, clinical, and you know, don't bring any creative nothing to it. And that was a horrible way to say that. Any creative nothing.
Yeah, but it's kind of true.
Right.
Don't bring nothing to it. Okay. Bring something to it. You're exactly right, though. I mean, there has to be a reason, an emotional reason for everything to exist, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as you started, I mean, obviously, you teach and coach some amazing actors these days. They didn't start that way. Who was the first person you coached that kind of blew up?
That would be, it's probably Amy Adams. Yeah. Amy. Yeah. But Amy she's a sweetheart. Amy was always the girl in class who was like, you know, raise her hand, ask a question, raise her hand, ask a question. And oftentimes she would go, I don't believe that. And I'm like, okay, good that you don't believe it. Let's get up and try it. What do you think? And she goes, no, that couldn't work. And I'm like, okay, let's try it. And she would, I'm willing to be wrong, right? There's a thing, you know, with acting teachers and coaches, ego is the great killer of creativity. And there are a lot of teachers out there that, I don't know how to explain it, but that are there for reasons other than helping actors. You've got to find a teacher who cares more about you than their own ego.
Yes.
Yeah, big time, right? But but I love to be wrong. If I'm wrong, then I've learned something. But Amy would challenge me at every step of the way. And but if Amy's the kind of gal that if she's wrong, she'll go, yeah, you're right. So, you know.
Okay. Yeah. That's awesome.
Okay, I got it now.
Do you find people and actors that are actually fearful of success? And how Do you help them address that?
I'll tell you one thing that I've seen is that sometimes, and I would see this mostly in classes, right when an actor hits a plateau, sometimes they'll quit. But what I've found is that when you're hitting a plateau in your work, excuse me, you're about to take a quantum leap.
So once you hit there, what do you see actors get wrong the most? Quitting? Do you mean quitting class, or do you mean quitting the business?
Quitting the business, quitting acting. Yeah. And I think that's probably a fear thing. Yeah.
What advice do you give your students to kind of recalibrate that?
Question what you really want. What would happen if you were successful? What does your life look like, right?
Right.
What does your life look like if you decide to give up? I mean, I've also seen okay, I'm going to tell you a story. Way back in the day, there was a guy, his name is Mickey. And gosh, he was really talented. I mean, super talented. And I always say the difference between good and great is about this much, because if you put that work in and keep at it, right, you're gonna get better if you've got the right training.
Right.
And Mickey would come in every week, and I would say, okay, Mickey, this week for your homework for this week, I want you to, and I would give him a list of things to do. And I think you're going to enjoy it, and it's going to be so much fun, right? Mickey would come back the next week, and he would kind of do it, kind of not do it. And so on break one day, I said, Mickey, you got to give it not 100%, 110%. He goes, okay, you're right. He came back to class the next week and goes, I want to talk to you. I said, okay. He goes, I think I'm quitting acting. And I went, okay, that's a decision. And he goes, I'm going to go for music. And I thought to myself, oh boy, music is a seriously difficult industry, right? It's just as
that might be the only thing worse than trying to be an actor.
Maybe. And I thought, okay, but Mickey, if you do this, would you please do me a favor and give it 110%? He goes, I will. I said, then it's the right call. And he said, okay, and handed me a demo CD. It was called Kara's Flowers. And I took it home and I listened to it. I went, huh, that's pretty good. He was the bass player. And a couple of months later, they became Maroon 5.
What?
So you see how it's got to be your passion for you got to have the passion for what you're doing, right?
As far as the audition process goes, what's one of the biggest things you see actors get wrong?
Playing it safe. That doesn't mean that you should do something wild, zany, and crazy that is not character appropriate. But giving that safe read is usually because the actor might not have investigated that character thoroughly enough. And you can do, a little character work for your auditions that will make a profound difference. For instance, you don't have to do full on emotion with detail for your audition. You can truncate that. I should probably write a book on how to do that, but it's quite possible to do that. But a little investigative character work goes a long way. Also, some mistakes I see sometimes is that an actor might forget, we never enter a scene the way we leave it. It's very easy. It's easier, I think, to see how the character leaves a scene. Is it angry? Is it sad? Is it distrustful? Is it happy? What is it? Chances are the character didn't enter the scene that way. Not always completely true, but, and I always like to say, why did casting give us these scenes? What character traits are being shown in each of these scenes, and how are they different?
If you had to like put out a job description on like a business website, how would you describe what the actor's job is?
What an interesting question. The actor's job is twofold. Like you say, it's show business. You are your own small business owner. Treat it as such. Because the thing about craft and business is that they don't go together, but they got it. Yeah. So when you have your craft hat on, all craft. When you have your business hat on, all business. Keep superbly good records, right? Yeah. For one, but where those two do meld, I think, is I'm going to tell you another story, okay?
Okay, tell me another story. I love your stories.
When I first moved from New York to LA, I had a landlord in New York who, completely sure this guy was mafia, but I loved him. He was such a nice guy, and he looked after me. He just, I don't know, we just hit it off. And he said, "Hey, I've got a producer friend in LA." I went, "Oh, really?" He goes, yeah. And I'm like, and I'm thinking, probably not, right? So he tells me the producer's name, and I'm like, oh my God, that guy is one of the biggest producers in town. And my landlord, Joe, said, "I'll set up a meeting for you." I thought, but he did. Oh, wow. So I'm in LA. I set this meeting up with this, humongo producer. And I'm so naive at that point. Just so naive. So I walk in, my best outfit, my hair, my makeup all done. And he's so nice and gracious to me. And he goes, "So tell me what you do." And I'm like, "I can do anything from comedy to Shakespeare," which I could. Right. But what I didn't realize is I was shooting myself in the foot because he had no idea what to do with me. Because the business side of acting, managers, agents have to know how to sell you, how to market you. So I always like to say that you have to play the game before you can beat it. Know what your type is and market that. If you're just starting out and you don't have any footage, then there's several places around that will make a reel for you. They'll write your scene, they'll shoot it for you. I think you do that, right? Yeah. But I tell you, it's a much needed service, because if people can't see your work, they're not going to hire you. But you need to type yourself if you can. And that would be, I think, experimenting in class, in acting class.
That's a great story. Because I remember one time when I was out in LA, something similar. Like there was a buddy of mine that was in a writer's room that for some show, was like, the writer's assistant or whatever. And I had a demo reel. I had worked super hard to put this thing together, and it was it was on VHS tape at the time. I went to pick the tape up, right? It was in his office, and you know, there he was in his office, and I walk in and I'm just like, hey, I'm just gonna pick up my, I'm just here to pick up my demo. He was like, yeah, it's right over there. And I turned around and I picked it up and I was like, thanks. Turn around and walked out. And I'm standing on the elevator going, idiot. What did I just do? And it's not like you can walk back in the room. I'm just like,
Yeah.
It was one of those kind of business moments where I was like, oh, idiot. Like you have to have those, that interpersonal, you know, those skills, that skill set to be able to sit down and be comfortable in your own skin and be in the room with people and have a good conversation.
I like to call it a collaborative meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So that you see casting as peers, that you're working with each other. Mm-hmm. And that can kind of take some fear out of it a little bit.
Yes. That's a
also, I like to say, write yourself, even with a self-tape, write yourself a check to yourself. And in the memo, put, I mean, a lot of people don't have checks these days, put for the role of whatever the name of the role is on this date and this time. In other words, make the audition itself the gig.
I heard a story with Forrest Whitaker. And it was something very similar. He was like, he was going into auditions and going, you know, I got to book this. I got to pay rent. I got to, and he was never in the right headspace. And he decided, just like you said, and I don't know, maybe you taught him, I don't know. But he decided, this might be the only opportunity I get to practice my craft. So this is what I'm going to do, and forget about whether or not I get the part, and go into that with all the prep that you would do as if you were doing the role, and do it and forget about it. And that's when he started booking.
That absolutely true. And Forrest Whitaker, I think, is one of the kindest, nicest. I don't know him well. I coached a pilot once, and he was one of the producers, but wow, what a wonderful man, at least in my opinion, he was. He's exactly right. You don't want to walk in, you don't want to do a self-tape or walk in the room thinking about getting the job.
Right. But that mindset in that is, right, if I go into a role thinking, hey, this is my Oscar, you're likely not going to get the Oscar because you're not in the headspace. You're over here thinking about the Oscar. Shift your head and get your mental space into the moment where you need to be. And, you know, that is going to contribute, you know, to your moving and your advancement forward, you know, be that in the audition or, you know, or in the actual show or film or whatever it is you get in. So
absolutely. And you can't think a character thought and a personal thought at the same time. So if you stick with character thoughts, you'll be doing yourself a favor.
I know it's kind of a synergistic relationship, but would you say the script more makes the actor, or the actor more makes the script?
Well, I'm probably prejudiced, but well, I don't know. My son is a writer, so, and he's a really good writer. There's an old saying that I think is true. If it's not on the page, it's not on the screen. But I've seen mediocre scripts and great actors make really good films. So I think both of the elements ideally, of course, would be there. But I have seen actors seriously improve a script.
Yeah, and I will say this, and directors as well. Because I had the great good fortune to be in Junebug with Amy. And when I got the script, I read the script, and on first pass, I didn't get it. I was like, this reads like a stage play. And come to find out, Angus is actually a playwright, first and foremost. It was I think, a play that was put on in the New York area at one point. But Phil, and who was the director, and Amy did such and the entire cast did such a good job of pulling things out that were between the lines, that were not necessarily on the page, that you don't get without kind of digging into like what is, those moments. And so when I saw it, I was like, oh, I get it now.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's a wonderful example of doing the work. Like, that is part of the business. I think you said it perfectly at one point, and I've told students this for years. Like I said, you're going into business for yourself. You're getting out of school to be an entrepreneur. And I think that's the biggest hole in arts education. I always say it like this. There's you study law, you go be a lawyer. You study medicine, you go be a doctor. You study the arts, you go be a waiter. It's like there's a breakdown, unless you hit that, that breakthrough. What's that breakthrough role? What's the one that's going to get? And how much does the agent play in the breakthrough?
Agents and managers are different, right? An agent will have a lot more people on his or her roster than a manager will, or should. So a manager might have a little bit more of a personal interest in getting you that audition.
Mm-hmm.
Not always true. But agents, they may submit 5 people for this one role. Mm-hmm. Chances are your manager is just submitting you. I mean, that's not always true, but generally speaking, that's true. There was a thing in the studio a long time ago that I asked people to do, and that was, I called it just ask. Meaning, if you see someone in the business, excuse me, allergies. If you have an opportunity to talk to someone, just ask for help. You might be surprised who will help you. Hey, would you take a look at my reel and see what you think? Or do you think your agent would be willing to look at my stuff if you don't have an agent? People will generally be helpful if you just ask sometimes.
It's a mindset thing, because I think there is a lot of fear involved with any endeavor. I think actors a lot of times have the vision for Rome finished, right? They get this flash of Rome and it's like, oh, I'm going to start building that. And they get like halfway into digging the first trench and they're like, ugh, this sucks.
It's so true. One last little thing. When I got to LA, I just assumed I was going to work. Just assumed I was going to get an agent. So I think I walked in this one agency going, hi, I'm here. Thinking, I thought they were a sister agency of my agency in New York. They weren't. I thought they had to take me. They didn't. But I walked in like, hey, I'm here. Here's my resume. And they said, do you have a reel? I'm like, no, I've been doing theater. I don't have a reel. They're like, oh, okay. They signed me. I don't know why.
Right.
But anyway, they started sending me out and I got work. I booked and I booked and I booked and I booked. And then I started meeting people. And the friends that I was making would go, gosh, it's so hard here to get a job. I'm like, really? They're like, yeah, man, I auditioned for this, and this. I didn't get it. And I'm telling you, Keith, when that got in my head, I didn't work for a whole year.
Oh, wow.
What you're saying about mindset is absolutely true. You just have to keep believing. Got to do the work, though. You got to do, your craft has to be there. Your craft has to be there. But your mindset for your business side of it has to be there too. So
how long would you say someone starting out needs to just have blinders on with craft before they start trying to go after work?
I think that's kind of difficult to say because every single person is different. I've seen some people just begin craft wise and just fly, and others have a little harder time at it. So I don't think there's any set time that you can say, oh, I'm going to do this for this amount of time. And then if I don't, but I think you got to listen to your gut.
Yeah. I mean, it really is one of those businesses where you could go to Tisch or, Royal Academy and get out and never see the light of day, but you could get out of prison and hop a bus to New York or LA and be on something in 6 months.
You could. You could.
But it comes down to that mindset,
It truly does. And I coach a lot of famous actors. Yes, your parents are going to get you in the door, but they can't keep you there. So your work has to be superb, right? So, and that's true of every single actor on the planet. You might get your foot in that door, but if your craft isn't up to speed, you can't stay there. And I want it to be a 60-year career for you. So yeah.
Is there anything coming up for you that you want people to know about, or a website or anything that you want to send people to?
Stephen Van Dorn is opening up an in-person Stephen Van Dorn / Warner LOUGHLIN studio class in Atlanta.
Excellent.
And soon, one will be happening in Nashville soon too. So
your work has helped me tremendously, and if you are starting out in this business and you need a foothold or some explanation on just what the craft, what it means to have a craft, go to this lady.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you so much. That's so kind.
I will talk to you soon.
It's been my pleasure, and it's good to see you.